This is the grandstand that replaced the Ponsford stand where the carpet and the timber lay before we grabbed it and turned it into the memorabilia pieces. The MCG has been a big part of my life. I remember coming to grand finals with my dad when I was 7, 8 and 9 and getting here at 4 a.m. and sleeping at the front to then run in and get a seat. And then fast forward to when I was 21, I was literally at work reading a book called The 1 Minute Millionaire that told a story of a guy back in the 1980s that bought all the timber that was part of the Brooklyn Bridge walkway, made certificates up with the history of the Brooklyn Bridge and an inch by inch square of timber, and apparently sold them off for like $12 each. And word around the campfire is that he made $7 million from selling these pieces of the Brooklyn Bridge. Now that really inspired me. It really got me thinking of how could I take that idea and do something similar here in Australia. And I realised that the MCG had just started a redevelopment leading into the 2006 Commonwealth Games. They'd pulled down the Ponsford stand. So I made a few phone calls and found the wrecking company that was doing the demolition. And they had a whole bunch of the timber seating that was part of that famous stand, but they also had a whole bunch of carpet in their warehouse as well. Now, the crazy thing about the carpet is that it had the MCC crested logo. Really, really ugly carpet, but very, very famous, particularly for Australian sporting fans. Anyway, I was able to buy all that carpet and make a series of memorabilia frames up with a photo of the MCG, a square of that carpet, and a plaque outlining the history of the G and what it meant to Australians. And from there, wrote a press release. 21-year-old sells the MCG for $500. And that went ballistic. Channel 7 News, Herald Sun, bunch of radio interviews, and it really put this project in front of thousands and thousands of Aussie sports fans.
The MCG demolition works are proving to be an unexpected goldmine for a young entrepreneur. He's salvaged discarded bits and pieces and is now turning them into unique items of memorabilia.
He's planning to release 900 pieces, potentially worth well over $250,000.
One of the interesting things that happened during the whole project was getting a cease and desist letter from the MCG themselves. It turns out that the MCG actually has some legislation written specifically for the MCG, just like GST or whatever else we might have in the country. That's how important the MCG is for Australia. It has its own parliamentary acts, essentially. Anyway, I was using the MCG name a bit too much in the marketing of the frames, and they weren't too happy about that. They were supportive with the project, but weren't overly happy with me using their name. But made some changes there, and that was all good. But the whole project really, captured a lot of people's attention to the point where I actually got asked to write a book about the project and the way we marketed the frames and launched the whole thing. I think what really resonated with so many people was the authenticity of the MCG frames. There was so much sports memorabilia being sold back in the time that was manufactured, that had photos that were just signed by athletes, whereas owning an authentic piece of Australian sporting history was pretty remarkable. The real special thing for me, looking back now, 20 years on, is knowing that we're able to give the people's ground back to the people, essentially. With the redevelopment and demolition, all that history would have been lost. But by being able to sort of save the carpet and the timber and make the memorabilia series, allowed people whose family played at the MCG or whose team won a premiership or a game here to really be able to have that memory hanging on their wall in their home or in their bars or their offices. I think that is a really special memory for me to be able to sort of keep that Australian sporting history alive. It really is a crazy trash to treasure story for me, in that selling the MCG at 21 years old really laid the foundation for the next 20 years of my life and career.